Hey Matt, how are you? What is up with my link here? Hey Daisy, how are you? What's new? What's exciting? Hmm. Isaiah, Kim, how are you? Welcome back. Here we are, week 8. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Good to see you too, Gavin. Hey David, how are you? Marcus? Happy Monday, everybody. What'd you get up to over the weekend? Anything new? Let's see. Is everything working here? Yeah, looks like everything's good. Hey Shelby, how are you? Interesting. So, where are we? Oh, that's right. We're in the middle of a module. So, that's right. We got another week on this one. Hey, Anna, how are you? Welcome. We'll get started in just a minute. What's our trivia topic for the day? What did we say? Let's see. I think we did Marvel here. Yes. Um, there was one that we said we were gonna do. I can't remember what it was though. So you're gonna have to help me out. So, but here we are. We're in the middle of a module. So, just remember, module 3. This should be module 4. Hang on just a second. Module 4. Yes. 7 and 8. Yeah. So, pretty chill week this week. At least I hope so. For y'all. Normally, we'd be running up to spring break here, but of course, spring break is a little bit different this semester. It's okay. These things happen. Hey, Harley, how are you? There we go. All fixed. But yeah, so we're just on this one module here. 7 and 8 homework and quizzes. That's about it. So discussion if you're of course not here. Wednesday, sorry about last Wednesday. Totally jacked that up. And the Zoom room was messed up anyway. So, but this Wednesday we'll definitely be on campus and should have everything working because I hadn't been on campus that much, and some of the tech, they've changed it a little bit, but I got it figured out. So we will do a live session on campus on Wednesday, and then we'll broadcast that one as well. And so I'll post a link here. Yeah, probably right, just a couple minutes before class starts. Now, if you haven't been on campus or if you haven't had a chance to go kind of through the process, my understanding is that it's like getting a little bit easier. So, as far as like testing and things like that. But don't don't forget that you have to check in with the so there's someone who's sitting in the hall in HSB. You got to check in with them and show them your your little QR code that you get from the online survey, which is this guy right here. No, not that one. This one right here. So from your side, if you're on the student side of the website, it's just this first panel right here. Just fill this thing out real fast, because they will stop you. All right. And if you haven't signed up for this, just click this register thing. Just be sure that you're using your actual student ID right here. That's your PID. Or actually, no, this might be your net ID. I don't know. Trying both. So I think I had to try it a couple times myself. Hey, Aiden, how are you? So yeah, what's our trivia topic? Sorry, I can't remember what we were going to do. Were we going to do Game of Thrones here? Was that the one? I can't remember. Or maybe we voted that one down. Shoot, I don't know. Here we are, week 8. So halfway through the semester. And we've been meeting so much that I just have no idea what we've actually covered as far as trivia goes. But that's okay. All right. So chapter 8. Here we go. Let's talk about chapter 8 a little bit today. Yep, this one. Yeah, so chapter 7 we talked about motivation. We did talk about everything in here that I think I wanted to talk about. So, because we did talk about process-based theories. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is the whole idea behind equity theory. Yeah, we did this. Okay. So we're good there. All right. And again, just like in chapter 7, those 3 things. So watch out for Maslow, watch out for Herzberg, and then of course equity model. All right, those are going to be your most important motivational theories out there, or at least the ones that you're going to see the most out in the wild. Let me put it that way. But let's actually talk about so chapter 8 is a little bit more of a boilerplate chapter. There's a lot of stuff in here, but the thing that I like to spend a lot of time on is this reward systems. Okay, because a lot of this stuff you're going to get this in an HR class, and so this is kind of more the nuts and bolts of like motivation in terms of how we actually. I mean, what are the juicy bits as far as getting a job goes? What are the things that a company attempts to bribe you with, so to speak? And it's more of an economic kind of like approach of things, where you'll work hard because we pay you to do your job, and that's what you're really here for. And I mean, there is always a kernel of truth behind that. I would say that most managers, and especially if you're in a field where pay is relatively stable, meaning that working at company A doesn't really mean that much different in terms of a benefits package and compensation than working for company B. So if it's fairly stable like that, using the kind of the levers of motivation, pay, benefits, actual compensation, I honestly, it runs its course. Okay, so you get used to a certain level of pay, and all of you will. All right, so the first 6 months on the job, when you get that brand spanking new job that's got this awesome paycheck stapled to it, you're gonna be tickled pink. But after 6 months, I guarantee you, your expenses are gonna rise to your level of income. Even if you're saving, that's the trick behind that. People say, "Oh, well, I'm saving money, so I'm not spending as much." No, you're just spending it on yourself. All right, so I mean, nobody you don't get a paycheck from a company for whatever your monthly salary is. Say your starting monthly salary is like $6,000 or $7,000. Okay, you're going to spend all $7,000. You're not going to turn to the company and say, "No, I don't need that other 2. You can keep it." So even if you're throwing it in the bank or throwing it towards debt or putting it for a down payment or something, you're still spending it on yourself. And so with that in mind, your idea of you're like I said, you get comfortable with a certain level of pay after a little time, and so then it doesn't really motivate quite as much. And so this chapter spends quite a bit of time that it doesn't really need to, but it does, on different types of performance appraisal systems, performance appraisal techniques. This is HR stuff. It's important for OB, so we'll go over it just a little bit. But the thing that I really want to talk about is different reward systems, because that's usually what people are interested in. And same thing with individual and group incentive plans. And so we'll go through these stuff today. And then on Wednesday, we'll decide what we're going to do on Wednesday. So there's 2 discussions that I always like to have. Hello, Rian. So, hey, Dean, how are you? That are kind of an AMA kind of thing. So one of them we always do on investing. because I think it's really important that you actually kind of get your own financial house in order before you get into a management gig. Because the sooner that you do that, the better off you're going to be, especially in terms of not being tempted to do some things that are unethical. Okay, so now I would argue that most of the people who you see on the job who do things that are unethical, they don't necessarily see them as being unethical because it's like a false choice between two different things, and that relates back to this stuff here. If you get used to a certain level of pay, and if you get into yourself into a situation where you're doing all these life plans, you're getting, the money together for a down payment on a house, you're getting ready to have a kid, or get married, or something like that, or your mom's really sick and you got to take care of her. Okay, and so you're paying for in-home care or something like that. And then your boss comes and asks you to do something along the lines. It's like, oh, well, they're going to audit this down the road, but I need you to sign off on it. So, and that what your boss is asking you to do is unethical, maybe not illegal, but it's definitely unethical. And your risk of getting caught is really low, and you don't really want to rock the boat because you don't want to upset that paycheck because you've got other priorities going on, and so you're like, yeah, I'll pencil whip that, it's not a big deal. All right, those are the kind of ethical violations that most people make. All right, so I don't think I've seen anybody, with maybe one or two exceptions in my career, but just do something blatantly like, it's like, oh, let me see if I can get away with this. I've only seen that happen a couple times. Most of the time, it's usually something little on the edges, and it just kind of chips away, and then eventually it gets to the point in time where that's just the way we do things around here, and we just operate without any ethics, and that happens because people don't have their financial house in order. They can't say no. All right. And so we will definitely do a day where we talk about that. The other day that I do is kind of an AMA is about hiring, and specifically career planning and doing some. I don't really like mock interviews. I don't do like mock interviews and stuff. You can do those over at the Career Center. They're actually really good at them. But more so, like, how do you set yourself up? How do you find a job? What are the things that you can kind of expect? And maybe just kind of like help you through the mental aspects of job searching a little bit more so than anything else, because I think that's the thing that tears people up the most. In fact, I've even seen some of my students that I keep in touch with after they graduate. I keep in touch with a lot of them on LinkedIn. And man, some of them get really frustrated. Yeah, that's okay. It happens. All right. So, but at the same point in time, I want you to be a little bit prepared for that as well. And so those will be two of the days that we spend in discussions, and those we'll definitely do via Zoom, so you can ask questions as well on Wednesdays in case if you don't feel comfortable coming to campus, that's fine. So we'll still do them. But again, those all relate back to this chapter here, and so we'll spend some time talking about this one here today. But still, I need a trivia. So you just want to do general trivia today? Or something, so because I want to get at least 3 in today, and we are definitely at a softer part of the semester, so we don't need to really be like rushing through all this material and stuff. So yeah, let's get some trivia topics. Jeff, you say you want to do general trivia? Sure, let's do some general trivia. We'll kick that off before we start talking about this. So let's just go ahead and do that then. Oh, it's 2021. Let me see if we can find a new site here, shall we? Oh, I guess it's been 2021 all year. So, let me see. What do we got? Oh my goodness. These are hard. Oh, here's a good one. Yeah, it's easy. You might know this one. What year did the Titanic sink? What year did the Titanic strike an iceberg and sink? What year was that? There you go. So, isn't that like the most popular movie ever, if I'm not mistaken? So, or maybe it was the highest grossing until, I think some of them are... No, not 1917. Good guess, though. That's actually during World War One. So, no, Titanic sank before then. So, good guess, though. There you go, Matt. You got it. 1912. Yep, it was April something, 1912. Yeah, it's kind of considered to be the end of the Victorian era. So yeah, no, a lot of you got it right there, but Matt, you got it punched in first according to the snapshot machine here. So good job. Let me know what you want. And of course, you're eliminated for the rest of the day, but we'll do some more general trivia here in just a few minutes. So like I said, today's going to be a short day. I'm not going to blah, blah, blah about this too much, but we will get 3 trivias in today. I promise. All right. So, this chapter does go into things about different types of performance appraisals and the use of performance appraisals and stuff like that. Now, I'm going to be really blunt with you. Your company and your organization in the future is going to be either... I don't see any companies that get this just right. Okay, so either performance appraisals, they're way too frequent and they don't mean anything. And so it's really kind of this kabuki ritual that we do every single year or every single quarter or in some cases like monthly, especially if you're a new employee, or you never get them at all. So, it's kind of one way or the other. But you really should, as a manager, think about feedback loops are important. But the problem with most feedback loops is that most managers just don't have the power to actually be able to influence an employee's career that much. Okay, so a lot of the larger companies that you'll find out there, it's very rote, and you'll have to go up through several layers of management before you find someone who actually has serious decision-making authority. Okay. Whereas usually as a frontline manager, okay, you get to hire people, but if you want to fire someone, you have to, it takes an act of Congress, all right, in some cases. In other cases, those are all things that are done by committee, or you're new enough, or, someone just doesn't trust you enough, or you have to run everything by somebody else, so you're not really in charge, kind of thing. And in those cases, of course, the people who do have some kind of power and authority in the company, they're not going to waste their time doing performance appraisals, okay? So they'll make you do it, all right? And so, but you won't have any, real oomph behind it. And so it really does become this kind of ritualized kind of thing. But understand how important feedback is to employees, all right? So there's this thing called the JCM, the Job Characteristics Model, and I think we talked about that. That might be in a later part. I can't remember. Man, it all runs together after a while. So, but the whole idea behind it is that there are certain elements of certain jobs that are fundamentally satisfying, and one of those things is feedback. All right. So, do you have a job that has a built-in feedback loop into it? And not some arbitrary thing, but you're in car sales. Okay, so did you sell more cars than everybody else? That means you're doing a good job, right? Okay, so but if your job doesn't have anything like that, you have to start baking feedback into it, all right? And so feedback's important because it makes the job a little bit more motivating. It's important for self-development, okay? So people kind of know where they are and where they're trying to go. And what are you doing? Oh, man. This is a weird cat day today. I can feel it already. So, but anyway. And then understanding that, sometimes, if your rewards are actually tied to feedback, it also becomes this very ritualized thing, all right? Especially if you're talking something like bonus structure or something like that. Or like the infamous Christmas bonus where, I work my butt off, you're a slacker, but we both get the same Christmas bonus. What the hell, man? So at that point in time, we realize, okay, so this isn't really a bonus; it's a participation trophy. Got it? All right. So there are things in there that you do have to consider in those cases. All right. So and then there's other things that we actually do with performance appraisals that do. I mean, they're more operational. So, are we going to make decisions about who gets to move up in this company or who gets what shift, things like that. And also identifying training development needs, who actually needs a little bit more help. Or, systemically, is there something that is lacking from our training regimen because we're seeing it show up in all our performance appraisals across the board, okay? Lots of problems with performance appraisals. Probably the main one is validity. Does it actually mean something? I mean, is it actually one of these things where your manager or you, if you were the manager, does your judgment really, really matter that much? So is it really that close to the mark? I would argue no, in most cases. As a manager, you're not going to know everything that's going on with your employees unless you're only managing 3 people. So, but in most cases, especially you get a little bit further down in your career, you've got way more people than that. So you can't sum up somebody's efforts in 10 minutes, you're going to have to because that's the expectation. But that doesn't mean it's going to be any good. And so that's where we get this thing called central tendency error. If you're in stats, you know what central tendency is. So those are your measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. And it's just regression towards the mean, where basically some people are a little bit too mean, some people are a little bit too nice. And you know what happens after a while is you use those goalposts and kind of stick yourself between the two of them. All right, employees don't like it when you do that. Especially if they deserve a little bit more punishment, or if they deserve a little bit more praise in one way or another, then this doesn't really make anybody that happy. But it's going to happen, and it's something that's very difficult to actually get away from because you just don't know. All right, so you're dealing with missing information. All right. And so that does happen, all right? The other thing that happens is this thing known as the halo effect, all right? And so this is where if you have someone who's really good in one thing, you have this tendency to give them high marks on everything, okay? Just because, especially if it's a behavior that you want other people to emulate. So you have that person who's always there 5 minutes early, always makes a coffee, always unlocks the shop kind of thing. Maybe they're a terrible cashier and their cash reports are horrible and you have to fix them all the time. But hey, they've got the right attitude. They're there, and they're really supportive of all their employees. So you give them 10s across the board, and everybody else is like, well, yeah, but you got to fix his cash reports all the time. You're like, well, that's okay. I don't mind helping Bob out, kind of thing. But you also be careful with this, okay? Because that does happen. Recency error, if something happened recently, it sticks in your mind, right? And then personal bias, we've already talked about that. All right. How do you reduce errors in performance appraisals? There's an answer that nobody likes, okay, but it's true. It's just spend more time on them, okay? So, and make sure that you're cognizant of what you can and can't do in a performance appraisal. So, a lot of times people will try and use a performance appraisal to affect behaviors, and it's really difficult to change somebody else's behavior with just a little bit of feedback. Okay, now that's one key step in the process, but you can't just assume that's the only thing that it's going to take. So, if you're in a situation where you've got an employee and they've got some problems, performance-based problems and things like that, you said, hey, this is a problem, I need you to fix this by next Saturday. Just don't assume that they're, oh, okay, boss, I'll get right on it, kind of thing. What you really have to do in a situation like that is you have to think about it as all right, so what am I going to say to him? What am I going to watch for? And if he doesn't do anything, what am I going to do next? And so it's actually multiple steps rather than just what am I going to say to him? Okay? And so, yeah, understanding that, there is more to this entire process than just the actual ritual of doing the performance appraisal. That's probably the best thing you can do to actually make sure that you're not making as many errors in these things. But there are some good tips here. Yeah, so this one, avoid terms such as average, or meets expectations. I see that one all the time where it's below something, something. In fact, I think one of the rubrics for this class might have that stuff. And we got that from Extended Studies, if I'm not mistaken, kind of thing. And so I'm not really following my own advice there, but the reason why it's not that big a deal in a class is because fundamentally, I mean, we're only here together for 6 months. So if you're an employee at it, or not even that, 4.5 months, but if you're an employee and you work for a company for 10 years, and for the entire 5 years, first 5-year careers, you were below expectations, but that's actually good around here, that's not going to make you feel very good as an employee. All right, so be careful with stuff like that. All right. And just be upfront and be as transparent as you can, but also understand that most performance appraisals, they are going to be closed doors kind of affairs. You're not going to want your employees to share them with each other. They won't want to share them with each other. All right, so, and that of course increases some error as well. So if you can find anything out there that is actually a metric that is patently apparent, that you can use as a performance appraisal rather than something that's arbitrary and hidden, use it. So, like, how many units did you sell? That's a great one. When I worked in the airlines, it was like, did you guys get planes out on time? All right, it was a simple yes, no. So it was binary for each one. And so if we had, 100 flights over a given period of time and we got 99 of them out on time, that's pretty freaking good. All right, so in the next month we got 80 of them out. That's not so good. And so those would be things where you actually don't need to arbitrate, somebody's performance. It's clear. All right, so if you can find things like that, those are best. Those are best. Sometimes you can't, though. That's true. All right, techniques for performance appraisals. It kind of goes through a couple different types in here, so I'll let you read through this. Everyone's going to do this a little bit different. So I've been in companies where it's done through an interview process. I've been in companies where this is basically done by anonymous survey. I've been in situations where people were forced ranked. That one's kind of brutal, but it works on a certain level. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but really, you're not really going to have much say in that in the beginning of your career unless you're the one who's starting the company, so to speak. Recommendations on this one is like whatever you do decide to use or whatever you're forced to use, just make the best of it. Okay. Don't try and make it perfect, but at the same point in time, make sure that you have something that's robust enough where you'll have an opportunity to give somebody a piece of feedback on the dimensions that are actually really important. Okay, and so the real trick behind these is figure out, okay, what's important to me as a manager or my organization. Okay, and then just make sure you've got that baked in here somehow. The other thing that I would recommend is remove as much of the, you do want to express some judgment as a manager, but if you can make things measurable, all right, where it's clear cut, so like something very straightforward, like were you on time? All right, how many times were you late over the last 6 months or something like that? Okay, where it's like, oh well, let's go count. Okay. If you can bake those things in there and still have them be meaningful, those are much better than like a scale like this one down here where it's like, oh yeah, like it's slow or medium or high. Well, what does that mean? Sometimes you do have to do it that way though. It's just the way that it works. Okay. So yeah, be careful with that though. But your company's going to do it a little bit different, and each one of them is a little bit unique. And so just be careful, all right? So when you get on with a new company, you try like within your first 6 months to get an idea of how seriously they take this, okay? Because your career could absolutely live or die by a performance evaluation at some point in time if your company takes it that seriously. Or you could, cause yourself a whole bunch of stress that's just not necessary because this is just, it's kabuki and we just go through the motions every single year, all right, kind of thing. So find out which way it is, and then you'll be able to kind of navigate it a little bit better. All right. Oh yeah, no, we don't need to talk about that. Yeah, let's jump ahead to this stuff, okay, shall we? We're going to talk about different types of reward systems, but let's do some more general trivia here real quick. Let's see. Oh, okay, we can do what year questions. What year was The Godfather released? So, the movie The Godfather, what year was it released? Boom, go. What year did The Godfather come out? The original Godfather. Man, I was watching this not too long ago, and you talk about a movie that just holds up. Yeah, good job, Dean. 1972. Bingo, you nailed it. I don't know why, but every now and then when it pops up on something, so like I don't know, I've got YouTube TV, and YouTube TV keeps adding channels and stuff. And like every now and then, you just find this marathon of something weird. So now, of course, you always get like the TBS marathons that are like, oh yay, an entire day of all the Jurassic Park movies. I'm done. So there aren't 10, there are 3. What are you talking about? There are three. There's Godfather 1, well, this is The Godfather, The Godfather 2, and then that third movie that we don't discuss. So yeah, that was the one that I was actually. I can't remember what channel it was on, but it's like Godfather 3 was on, and it's where who is it? That's Anthony Garcia, if I'm not mistaken, who plays uh I can't remember the character's name, but it's Michael's nephew, right? And you can tell that movie's like 1980s ish a little bit. So just based upon like the way that the shots are set up and things like that, and also what people thought were cool at the time. And there was just it was like almost like I was like, okay, I know this movie's almost over. Let's see if the actual good one comes on after this. So, no, you're fine. I gotcha. Yeah. Now Jurassic Parks, yeah, there are like 10 of them now. Are we getting a new one this summer, if I'm not mistaken? So, man, you talk about a series that like just went off the rails, man. So I don't know what's going on with that. I remember when that movie came out. I went to the theater to see it. So I took my little brother. It freaked him out for like a month. So, it was pretty cool. Leslie Nielsen, yeah, I think he was actually. Um, yeah, uh, yeah, I think so. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so when it's on, I don't watch it. All right, so, but it was a marathon where, yeah, it was that one was almost over, and then boom, we got the good one right after it because, of course, they flipped it back over. That's what I do on my weekends is I find TV to binge. I bet you guys are the same way. So, yeah, or new games to play or whatever. I don't go outside anymore. So, although actually it was a pretty nice weekend. I just didn't want to go out. So, but that's okay. Anyway, let's talk about reward systems here. All right. So I mean, on a basic level, this should be like a duh kind of thing. All right, you don't work for without pay, okay? And so, this volunteer work notwithstanding and stuff like that. But you will not. Yeah, no, you're not kidding. So Star Wars is just as bad. So don't get me started on that. Not happy about it. So, but anyway. You're not going to work a job without some kind of reward in mind, all right? And so, maybe eventually you do get to the point in time where you can do volunteer work, you can actually turn your hobbies into something. But really, when it fundamentally comes down to it, a job's a job, and the thing that separates a job from a hobby is the fact that you get paid for it. Okay? They both require effort, they both require attention, time. So, but when it comes down to it, you do one for one specific thing, and that's for the reward in a job. All right, and so job performance is largely thought, was largely thought to be linked directly to some kind of reward system. Now we know nowadays that this isn't necessarily true. All right, so that there's something fundamental about the centrality of work to our lives, whether it be paid work or volunteer work or hobbies or yard work or whatever, chores around the house, raising a family, whatever, So the amount of effort that you put into something is direct, or whether or not you're taking care of yourself. You're out there and you're hitting the gym every single day. That's work too, and all of that is very, very central to. Kind of your identity, your makeup in some respects. And so the reward systems being the sole driver of job performance, that's not necessarily as true as it used to be, but of course it's still there. Okay, so yeah, I mean, if I pay you triple to do a job compared to what you're normally used to getting for it, you're probably going to be pretty happy for a little bit. Okay. And so that actually does drive a lot of positive behaviors. So attendance and retention, so job retention or turnover intent. It's always one of the first things that Dr. Gilbraith and I look at when we go in to survey a new company. All right. So like, well, how's your turnover? So because high turnover is it's indicative of one of two things. It's either organizational problems or that's part of the design. All right, but it's always a problem. It's an expensive problem. And if it's not part of the design, it's definitely a problem. So it's one of the first things that we look for. And honestly, probably one of the biggest things that drives any kind of turnover problem is pay. Okay, so people look around, and people are pretty good judges of their own industry. All right, especially if they've been in it for a little while. They say, "Oh, well, you can make this much here as opposed to that much over there." All right, and so if your company's a little bit behind the curve, eventually people are going to figure that out. They're going to say, "Oh, wait, actually, this is the bad place to work. This is how you get your foot in the door in this industry." And so, okay, that's just the way this company is, but that means we're going to have a lot of turnover because as soon as jobs open up at the better company across the street, all right, so they just poach people out of here, all right? And so, yeah, that would probably be related to a reward system right off the bat. We could tell that, probably within 10 minutes of walking into that place. The other thing that reward systems drive is employee commitment. So employee commitment and job retention are very closely related. Commitment is just basically like the idea is like, okay, am I going to keep doing this for a living? Okay, kind of thing. And so maybe it's not necessarily tied to a specific company, or an organization or a job unit. But, it's still at the same point in time, it's like, oh, well, I'm a paramedic. I'm going to be a paramedic regardless of whether or not I work for AMR or whether or not I work for the city or the fire department or something like that, okay? And so job commitment is largely related to reward systems. So there's jobs out there that are absolutely fantastic jobs with every level except for one, that's pay. Okay, so, teaching's a good example of that. I mean, if you want to go be an elementary school teacher, it's fantastic work, and I know so many people who absolutely love it, but you have to put up with making $27,000 a year with what is essentially a master's level education. All right, and so job commitment and employee commitment to the profession at that point in time, it usually requires something special because that the reward system isn't there to back it up. And I would make the argument that's why the reward system is so crappy. Okay, so, in some respects, yes, districts and schools are cheap and whatnot, but that's taxpayers, really. That's not really the school. But when it comes down to it, there's a lot of cool things about teaching that people like to do, and they're willing to put up with bad pay for it. There's other jobs out there that are terrible jobs. Okay, they're absolutely awful jobs, but they pay just gobs of money. All right, in order to compensate for a lot of the things that are actually wrong with the job. So I had a buddy, he was a directional driller for years. He hated it, okay? So he'd have to go out there and spend, months, on the plains of North Dakota, in the middle of nowhere in a little camp, basically, where he's living in a double wide with 3 other guys who, don't close the shower curtain kind of thing. It's just hideous. He's got to make his own food. There's no way to actually, there's no McDonald's to go eat at and stuff like that. All right, so he's got to bring a ton of food with him. And, he's got to work 12-hour shifts, which usually run anywhere from, I think normally he was 12 days on and 2 days off or something like that. It's just absolutely brutal. But then, he's getting paid $250,000 a year. All right, so then it's kind of like, oh, okay, actually this is pretty cool, So, but again, I mean, think about that. In that system, you have a reward system that is basically there to compensate for all the crappiness that job actually entails. All right, and so it's kind of the opposite of teaching in that case. So we want you to do a really, really, really bad job that's going to ruin your back. It's going to make you fat, all these different things. But at the same point in time, here's your paycheck. So be happy, right? And so sometimes your reward system functions in that direction as well. Reward systems are related to job satisfaction, but again, to go back to Herzberg stuff, I would argue that most of the time, misalignment in your reward system actually causes dissatisfaction on the job. So that's the relationship you really want to watch out for. Okay? So there's a lot of different things out there about reward systems, but one of the things that I think is a good way to kind of think about it in some respects is there are basically 2 ways in which you can actually reward somebody. And you can use these as incentives, so to speak, to kind of get people to do what you want to do. And there's intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. All right. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is because I want you to absolutely watch out for when companies say things like this. All right. So hang on just a sec. Extrinsic rewards are really simple. It's what all managers do. Okay. So an extrinsic reward is a reward that comes from somebody else. It comes from the outside. Okay. So a paycheck, a health benefits package, the parking spot that's close to the building, whatever. All right, those are all extrinsic rewards that somebody or an institution, organization, or a person will give to you. All right, that's all you can do as a manager. All right, so a lot of management and a lot of people out there will say, like, on the other hand, intrinsic rewards represent those rewards that are related directly to performing the job. So it's the nature of the work itself that's fun to do. Okay. And I see it on LinkedIn a lot, and it's completely false. It's almost like vapid, like just, meme clickbait kind of stuff. And the funny thing about it is I see people kind of like sign up for it too. And, like, oh, here, let me, so retweet this thing, so to speak. But really, an intrinsic reward is not something you can give to somebody as a manager. By definition, it is not something that you can actually encourage in somebody else. Okay, because it comes from within, all right? And so it's like, well, we need to find, more intrinsic incentives around here. It's like, you can't do that, man. So it's extrinsic. If it comes from you and it's coming to me by its very nature, it's extrinsic, okay? So, and I don't mean to be like, a little bit too harsh on that one, because quite honestly, that usually means is that I was like, oh, well, we can't pay people enough around here, or we're not willing to do some heavy lifting in order to actually increase our compensation or benefits package or make the job better for our employees. So let's find a way to make the job more fun. Okay. It's lazy management. That's all that is. All right. But you're going to run into it, and, just know what you're getting into when you expect that. And so if you start seeing people talk about intrinsic rewards, it's usually because it's going to take too much work to actually do this one right. All right. But this is the only one that you can do as a manager. And so what do you do in situations where your hands are kind of tied? All right. There are almost always going to be ways that you can actually, find things that make the day go easier for your employees one way or another. All right. That you can use as a reward system that works completely within whatever context. So say you're a union shop, everybody's pay is set, something like that. Or it's not even a union shop. Maybe it's just a big retailer, okay, so there's no way you're ever going to get your regional boss's approval to give everybody a raise. All right, fine. All right, and, it's not like you can go around and say, oh, well, let's shop for a new benefits package. No, you don't have that kind of power. All right, but maybe you do have, like, other things that you can do. Maybe you write the schedule, okay? So maybe you can take some consideration in terms of the schedule. Maybe you can approve people's time off, okay? So that was one of my favorite reward systems to use out there, especially when I would see people and they had just tons of, like, sick time or PTO or something like that burned up. Or, stocked up, and it's like, hey, why don't you take the rest of the day off? Well, I don't want to use any PTO. No, that's okay. Just punch out. Okay. And people would be like, oh, really? Yeah. No, go ahead, man. It's totally cool. You could always find little things like that where you could actually, just motivate people or reward them in meaningful ways without necessarily having to operate, on the level where it's like, oh, well, we need to get a formal raise approved for this guy. No, there's a lot of things you can do. When I worked for the airlines, particularly when I worked as a contractor, ran a little small, like, what do we could call them, FBOs, fixed base operator. So basically we were a contractor that did ground services for major airline. And, it was really easy to find ways to reward people using extrinsic rewards for jobs well done. So someone did a really good job the day before, and say it's a really hot day. It was like, well, why don't you work inside today, man? So stay inside where the air conditioning's on. They'd be like, oh, sweet. You could always find little things like that you could do for individuals. Just a little bit of consideration goes a long way. All right, so, but understand that's extrinsic, Okay, if you do get managers out there, it's like, well, we need to increase the intrinsic reward or the intrinsically. We're looking for people who are intrinsically motivated. That means you're looking for people who are dumb. Okay, so people are just like, oh, I love to work all the time, man. So, I don't care what it is. So I'm not. I don't mean to be too harsh there, but at the same point in time, that's kind of what they're saying in that situation. It's like, oh, you just want people who like to work really hard so you can take advantage of them. If you were actually going to reward them, then we would be focusing on these. But that's neither here nor there. But just keep that in mind, all right? Money and motivation. So does money actually motivate people? The answer is kind of, sort of, but not always, all right? And it depends on a lot of different things. So first and foremost, like, how much do you need money, all right? So someone who's really, really desperate for money or in really tough financial straits is going to be motivated to do absolutely horrible things, all right? For a paycheck. There's an exercise that I usually do in the on-ground version of this class that I usually save until about like week 12 or maybe week 13 or something like that. And so in this class, the way that it's worked out is we're doing extra credit through trivia, which is great. All right, everybody gets a shout out and stuff like that. Normally when I ran this class, we do in-class exercises, and so like the team that does the best in an exercise or the person who, negotiates the best thing or something, whatever, here's your free quiz kind of thing. All right. But in this class, there is an exercise that I do towards the end where, I give like people the chance to get like 10 quizzes. Okay. But it's for the whole class. It's not like everybody gets 10 quizzes. It's like, no, there's 10 quizzes that we're going to give out today. And this person here, you get to decide who gets them, so to speak. All right? And if the person that gets that power, all right, really needs, because they're so far behind in the class at that point in time, they really need them. And I say, hey, if you want to keep them all for yourself, that's fine. You just have to justify that in front of everybody. I've seen people do that. I've seen people absolutely do that, where they're in a room full of people who are in the same situation, and all of them are like, oh, well, I could use one or two. And then that person there is like, well, I haven't done any of my work all semester, so I'm going to eat them all. Okay? And everybody's just like shocked. They're like, how can you do that? You look how greedy you are. And they're totally right. Okay, but you understand that if that person is in a situation where they can actually, they get the opportunity to do something like that, they'll do something that's completely unethical. All right, and they won't necessarily see it as unethical. They'll see it as like, fight or flight. It's survival of the fittest. I need this. I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity, kind of thing. So they'll find a million different ways to justify it. But think about that. The only reason why they're doing it is because there's a deficit. If they had actually done all their work, okay, and if they were caught up or if they had worked ahead a little bit, there's no way somebody would do that. They say, well, I'm just going to keep them all for myself, even though I already got them all done. Ha, 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 ha. Nobody's going to do that, okay? So because they don't need it. And the same thing's true on the job, all right? So if you're in a situation financially where you're in dire straits, you're going to do some pretty gnarly things, all right, if I give you the opportunity or the incentive to actually go the other way. And I'm not saying that's like a moral failing. That's just a human thing. Okay. Likewise, people that I've seen jack all their classmates out of free quizzes. I don't see it as an amoral thing, all right? Now, people get jacked out of quizzes see it as a moral thing. That's completely understandable. But at the same point in time, it's just kind of a human thing, where if you do have someone who's actually, in financial straits, they need it, they'll do things that are pretty desperate, or at least appear to be pretty desperate, all right? And so sometimes money doesn't really motivate us all that well. Sometimes it does to great effect, all right? Which brings up this idea of pay secrecy. I don't really want to talk about this, but there's this element of like, we're not always sure about like how much money motivates people because we don't know what everybody else is making around us. Okay, and so there are companies out there, some of them that you'll work for in a year or two, or this is policy. Okay, they don't want you sharing your salary with other individuals. Any company that's doing that is suspect, okay? So there is something shady going on there, all right? And, really, I think out of all the organizations I work for, I've only ever had one that actually shared pay with everybody, and that's my current one. That's because it's a state institution. Okay? But in most other cases, it was kind of like this forbidden topic. Whereas, like, well, we can't really talk about pay around here because, you know, my boss doesn't want me to find out that he's paying me half as much as he's paying this guy over here, and we're doing the same freaking thing. That is not a good way to run a business, okay? Because eventually people are going to figure that out. And they're going to be like, well, why is it like that around here? And they're going to start asking tough questions, all right? And really, the people who are smart in situations, the people who actually are worth their weight in gold, so to speak, they'll leave. So they'll be like, oh, screw this place, I'm out. All right, and so then you're left with the people who, you know, I mean, would get paid less. All right, so but you know that's because, you know, I mean, you were pulling shenanigans on your end as the manager. Don't do that. Don't do that, because that really kind of that makes it very difficult to tell whether or not money's a motivator around here. Is it a maintenance factor? It's like, all right, so we pay industry standard, and everybody's going to be okay. But this is a really cool place to work. You got really awesome people here. You know, we get out early every Friday kind of thing. So there's all these other things that make this job really cool. So you can tolerate the pay. You can only do that if you know what everybody's making. Okay. Or is it one of those, well, we pay a lot higher here, so it's Tesla. We expect you to actually work, you know, until you drop dead from stress exhaustion, you know, kind of thing. All right. But we're going to pay you really, really well. All right. And you're going to like it. All right. That, again, only works if you know what people are making. All right. So keep that in mind. All right. Let's see. We're just about at the hour mark here. We will talk about this in detail on Wednesday. Okay, so when we start talking about pay, compensation, and benefits, because these make for good kind of ask me anything kind of questions. All right, so start thinking about that. Compensation packages, you know. How do I get paid? What's a decent salary to be making these days? How do my insurance benefits work? Stuff like that. Things like gain sharing, profit sharing, bonuses, 401k. Yeah, so start thinking of questions along these lines. All right, things that you're curious about, and we'll start to answer some of them specifically. But we will spend at least one day talking about financial stability, security investing, things like that. Getting your own financial house in order. Another one about getting that first big job. And then we'll talk about this too, because one of the things that you're going to be facing in a couple years, which is really intimidating. It's really messed up that we make young employees, especially people who are fresh out of college, kind of do this. But you will be kind of expected to negotiate for a salary if that's the norm with your company. And so that's the problem about it. It's like sometimes you're going to get hooked up with a company in the next 2 years where, you know, trying to negotiate salary on your first job is completely taboo. And they're like, oh, who the hell are you? Who do you think you are? You know, or it's going to be the complete opposite where it's like, oh, wait, you're not going to actually negotiate for a salary? We need to rethink this and see if you're actually right for this company. So you don't know. You won't know. And so we'll spend a day talking about like how to kind of navigate that too. Because that involves that you actually understand how all these things work. And so I think we'll do a day of that as well. All right? So we'll save that one for a little bit. But yeah, start thinking about that in some respects. Like one of the questions you really should spend some time thinking about now, especially since you're getting close to graduating here, probably the next year and a half, 2 years, probably at the most for some of you. If not next fall, oh my goodness. So yeah, if you're graduating next fall or next spring, man, hold on to your butts, because I think the job market's going to be nutso here in a little bit. But anyway, we can talk about that too. But really, you need to start thinking about it. It's like, well, how much do I actually need to make? All right. That's a very important question. All right. And it's one that you should think about now when you can do so rationally. Because after you graduate, you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to think about that question very rationally, especially if you're broke. Okay, if you're broke and if you're in a situation where I need a job, I need to pay off college, blah blah blah, all that stuff, whatever. You're gonna be, you're gonna be very susceptible to any company that comes by and says, "Oh, hey, hello, new grad. Oh, you need a job? We got jobs for you." So, yeah. So, how do you feel about insurance sales? Kind of thing. And you'd be surprised what you say yes to in a situation like that. But if you think about it now, like how much do I need to make? All right. Then you can look at certain opportunities down the road and say, no, I'm not going to take that one. Okay. And now sometimes you might have to anyway, just because, okay, the rent, and stuff. But there are going to be other times where you're going to have to learn how to say no to certain opportunities because that opportunity will wind up hurting you, okay, in the long run. I mean, not like, your career is ruined kind of hurting you, but more like, well, you wasted 2 years there, kind of thing. So yeah, start thinking about that. How much do you legitimately need to make? All right. So because that's going to determine two things. It's going to determine where you live and it's going to determine kind of what you do. All right. So if you need to turn around and say, well, I need to stick close to my family. My family's here in Colorado. Okay, great. All right. So where in Colorado? I mean, Pueblo's a lot different than living in Lone Tree. Okay. Or something like that. Likewise, I mean, I want to move down to Durango. Yeah, good luck. All right, so, or something like that. But then on the other side, it'll also help determine okay, what industries you're going to work. Well, you can't. Well, I want to make $115,000, but I want to be in sports management. That's not going to work. All right, for the first few years. Okay, I mean. It means that you're going to be selling T-shirts and stuff for the first couple of years. I get that. I'm sorry you're not going to be the manager of a pro team right off the bat. All right, maybe someday down the road, that's great and stuff, but you got to think about that a little bit. And so it's like, all right, so maybe my industry is more important than my salary level. So then I can find a place where I actually, okay, I can do this here, all right, and make quite a bit of money, and live fairly comfortably. But, I'm in Hastings, Nebraska, as opposed to Los Angeles, right? So you have to think about things like that. And so that question, how much money do you need, really does determine a lot of things. And so start thinking about that because we'll talk about it, all right, in great detail coming up here. All right? Oh, look at that, right at the hour mark. Boom. Let's do one more trivia question here. And we will... wrap it up. Let's see. Nah. Oh, really? Here you go. How many players are on an Olympic curling team? Here you go. So it's a Winter Olympics question. How many players are on an Olympic curling team? Oh my gosh, I remember when this first came on the Olympics. My brother and I were absolutely hooked on it. Just sitting there at the bar for hours watching it. No, it's not 3. Good guess, but no. Yeah, Jeff's just like Johnny on the spot today. He's like, bam, bam. Shelby, you got it. It is 4. So there are 4 players on an Olympic curling team. I hear tale here that in Colorado Springs down at the USOTC, they actually have a curling facility that you can go and do curling in. I don't know if that's necessarily true. So, but no, you got it, Shelby. It's 4. So you got the right answer first there. So I want to try that someday. I don't know. I mean, any sport where you can hold a beer while you're doing it is interesting. So, yeah, it is interesting, but at the same point in time, we might have to check that out at some point in time. So, all right, so start thinking about this. What do you need to make? And then we'll talk about it some more on Wednesday when we pick this up. And we'll start talking about compensation packages in greater detail. And then same thing's true. Start thinking about questions that you have regarding investing and finance. All right, so because we need to get your financial houses in order, all right, before we get you that big management job. Because I'm going to tell you something right off the bat. you never go into debt when you're broke. All right, so it's only once you start making serious money where you start getting into serious trouble. All right, and so that's coming for a lot of you a lot sooner than you think. All right, so both good news, but also a cautionary tale there as well. So, but that's all I got for you today. You bet. So that's all I got for you today. I'll stick around here for a minute or two just in case you have any questions. But we will catch you all on Wednesday down to HSB 108, 11:15. And again, like last time, I know I missed a couple of you. That's because I got stopped at the door. so, so if you're gonna be there a couple minutes early. I'll try to do so the same. But if you get stopped at the door, it's totally fine. We probably won't get started till about 10 minutes after anyway. So, regardless of that, we'll see you either in person or on the Zoom on Wednesday. Take care now. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you all here soon. Bye now. You too, Jeff. Take care. Bye. See you, Harley. Mine? It's on Blackboard. Yeah. So sorry, I'm not gonna do it here on the YouTube, but yeah, it's on Blackboard. Just click on the contact info in there, which is this guy right here. Okay. We are either in person or you can come in via Zoom. I will have a Zoom link up. Either one's fine. So. But yes, Wednesdays we will do either Zoom for our discussions, or either you can do it Zoom or you can come in to HSB 108. Either one's fine. So, you bet, Rianne. You too. No worries. No worries. Yeah, it's kind of cool to come back to campus. I mean, it is a little weird, but at the same point in time, it's been a year, man. So even though we had some last fall, um, it's kind of cool. Things are starting to feel better. So starting to look up. All right, 30 seconds. You're welcome, Ashley. Have a good afternoon. All right, we'll see you. Take care.